And welcome back to EDU Channel 6 TV News.
And I'm Nicole, and today we are going to be talking about the fundamentals of education. We now will turn it over to Simone with a special report about the philosophies and learning theories of education.
Thank you, Nicole. The philosophies and learning theories are what have helped form what is now education as we know it. There are four main types of education philosophies that fall into two distinct categories: teacher-centered and student-centered. The two teacher-centered philosophies are perennialism and essentialism. Perennialism was derived by Plato and thought that wisdom from the past would guide us on through the future. It focused on subjects that were traditional and classical, with less focus on electives. It is very rigorous and demanding and develops mental discipline and rationality. Essentialism, though it is along the same lines, is slightly different. It uses Plato's idealism and Aristotle's realism and focuses on living productively today. It focuses more on scientific, technical, and vocational classes, and students gain critical core knowledge. On the other side of the spectrum, we look at student-centered philosophies. Romanticism and progressivism are the two student-centered philosophies that we will talk about today. Romanticism, derived from Rousseau, believes all children are born good and pure. Romanticism believes that children need to be isolated from society as long as possible so that their education can grow out of curiosity and interest. This is the type of philosophy that inspired Montessori education, where there's no curriculum or formal classes, and it's very student-centered around their interests. Progressivism is the other type of student-centered philosophy. It began in the 1920s by Dewey, but also stems from Rousseau. Progressivism believes that the education begins with the student and not the subject, and that knowledge will be redefined and changed. The interests and concerns of the students drive the curriculum and helps the student grow as a problem solver. People who believe in progressivism believe that the method trumps the contents of student learning, and it focuses on democracy and the student becoming a good citizen. Now we turn it back to Ashley.
Thank you, Simone. Next we will be talking about the learning theories of education, specifically behaviorism and constructivism. Behaviorism is a view that assumes the learner is essentially passive in response to environmental stimuli. The learner starts off as a clean slate and behavior is shaped through positive and negative reinforcement.
Positive indicates the application of stimulus, and negative indicates the withholding of stimulus. For example, a teacher would reward students who have good behavior with a class party or special treat, and students with bad behavior would be reprimanded and not get the treat or class party.
Constructivism is a theory that says that people construct their own understanding of knowledge through the world. This is through experiencing things and reflecting on their own knowledge and understanding.
Constructivism is where the learning is active and it is a very constructive process, thus the name constructivism. An example of constructivism would be when learners test a hypothesis through social negotiation. Unlike behaviorism, learners are not blank slates because of the experiences and cultural factors they bring into a situation.
Now that we've talked about the basic philosophies of education, let's talk about something different, the milestones of education.
The first milestone of education is the Common Schools movement. Horace Mann was considered the father of the Common School movement and insisted that the common schools should be free, universal, non-sectarian, and a public institution. This idea began in the 1830s and quickly spread through the northern and midwestern states. While it did grow toward the south and the western states, it took much longer but was installed by the beginning of the 1900s.
Next is Franklin Academies, which stemmed from the Common School movement. It was first established by Benjamin Franklin in 1751. It was classical education with a modern twist. It was divided up into three different schools: English, Latin, and mathematics. English school taught grammar, spelling, and proper speaking skills. Latin school taught the same aspects as English school, but in a more college preparatory way. Mathematics school had everything from algebra to calculus. It was so important that Franklin Academies came around because it involved both boys and girls, which is different because it used to be boys only went to grammar school and girls only went to female seminaries to learn other subjects.
Now fast forward to 1954 when the ruling of the Supreme Court of Brown v. Board of Education was decided. There were many cases that came before the Brown v. Board of Education, but this ruling changed previous decisions. The Brown v. Board of Education consisted of 5 separate cases dealing with the main issue of separation within the public school system. For all of these cases, they ruled in favor of the school boards at the U.S. District Court, so the plaintiffs appealed to the Supreme Court. The case was first heard in 1953, but the judges were unable to come to a unanimous decision and was decided to be heard the next year after the break. During the break, the Chief Justice died and was replaced before the case was reheard. When the case was reheard, the new Chief Justice was able to bring the entire board to a unanimous decision that the segregation of public schools was against the Constitution and therefore would be ended.
Another law that was passed was No Child Left Behind. It was signed in by George W. Bush on January 8, 2002. No Child Left Behind pushed for a larger federal role in holding schools accountable for how well students were doing. This was supported by both Democrats and Republicans. The federal government wanted to close the achievement gap between students. States didn't have to comply with the new requirements that No Child Left Behind imposed, but if they didn't, they risked losing federal money. No Child Left Behind was later replaced by the Every Student Succeeds Act in December 10, 2015. Now we're going to Simone with Book Talk Thursday.
Thank you, Ashley. I am so excited for Book Talk this week because we'll be discussing one of my favorites, Holler If You Hear Me. This book is written by Gregory Mitchie, who writes about all his encounters when working in the Chicago public school system. Each chapter is about a struggle Mr. Mitchie faced when working in either of the two schools he wrote about. At the end of each chapter, he would ask a student he taught after many years about how they felt in the situation and what their life was like outside of school. Some of their stories were tear-wrenching and others were very insightful. If anyone wants to have a better knowledge of the insides of urban schools, this book is your best choice. Now, we take it back to Ashley for some more breaking news.
Thanks, Simone. Now we're going to be talking about urban and rural schools and the different issues that they face. Urban schools have issues with gang violence, lack of experienced teachers, and lack of funding. In Mitchie's book, Holler If You Hear Me, he talks about the challenges he faced with gang activity in his classroom and how hard it was for his kids to stay out of gang life. Many kids have parents or siblings who are involved with gangs, and so it can be hard for them to stay out of the gang life. Gang activity is also brought into schools in many ways, through gang signs, gang violence, and gang recruitment. If kids can't get away from these gangs at school, how are they supposed to get away from them in life?
One struggle that is not prominent in urban schools as much as it is in rural schools is the technology. Because of where rural schools are located, they sometimes have trouble being able to acquire internet that runs for their students. Many of their students do not have internet at home as well, which causes issues when there is homework that includes the internet. Another issue that rural schools have is getting experienced teachers. Rural schools oftentimes are not where teachers want to teach because there is not much that happens around the area. Therefore, new teachers will go to rural schools to gain experience and then leave when they are hired someplace else.
Urban schools face the same issue. There's also lack of experienced teachers in urban schools. This is because teachers felt that they're underpaid, underrepresented, and have a harder workload. The students in these schools need more experienced teachers to give them the access to knowledge that they need, and these schools sadly have the highest turnover rates. These kids need the experienced teachers that can help them understand better, and that's just not what they're getting. There's also a huge lack of funding in these schools, which can affect their resources like computers, textbooks, even extra pull-out programs for those students who are struggling and need the better teachers. They can't get those access to those programs because they don't have the resources or money to give the students the help that they need. And examples of the different programs that could help would be specialized test prep and reading and math programs that can help them understand better.
Rural schools also have issues with funding as well. Rural schools often do not receive the same amount of funding as larger schools such as suburban areas because of how funding is distributed. When the state gives out school funding, they often base it on enrollment in the school or the amount of new students that the schools receive. Rural schools often have a small school population and rarely get new students because of where they are located. Another way that schools receive funding is through property taxes. Rural schools often have a poorer community and a lot of farmers, and this causes there to be a lower amount when looking at property taxes.
Thanks, Nicole. That's it for today, everyone. Thanks for watching. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Nicole.
And you're watching EDU Channel 6 TV News. Have a great day, everyone.